Welcome to Pink Couch Conversations with Carmalita. Today, we're going to be talking about grief, Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, and the very complicated, layered dynamic of family. A week ago today, my paternal grandmother passed away, and I was very surprised at the depth of grief I experienced because I don't know my grandmother. I went into foster care at 7 and was adopted at 10 and didn't see my grandmother again until I was 27. The thing is, I am reminded of my grandmother every time someone asks me, "What are you mixed with?" As if trying to explain away the beauty they perceive in me, because Black girls are not taught that they can be beautiful on their own. And the reason why I'm beautiful has to be because my grandmother is white. It's been my lifelong thorn because I am hella Black, hella pro-Black, hella everything Black, and yet my grandmother's white. Doesn't take away my Blackness, but anytime I rejected the idea that I was mixed, I rejected her. And I think it's understandable because, society and beauty standards and all that stuff. But while I did not know my grandmother, I held her very close to my heart because the reason I didn't have a relationship with my grandmother is because I needed to protect myself from my biological father. And the relationship I have with my biological father, it's very limited. It's very estranged. And I think it's important to highlight the fact that we a lot of times have a very romanticized idea of family and blood ties and familial ties. And I'm not with the shits because 98% of my family is made up from people who have no connection to me genetically whatsoever. However, I am mourning presently because I have suffered a loss, and the loss is a reminder of a relationship I will never have. The loss is a reminder of the trauma I experienced as a child. The loss is a reminder of the trauma I experienced as an adult when trying to reconnect with my biological family. And it sucks. I had a very rough childhood. And while the first 18 years of my life were not ideal, the last 12 years of my life have been amazing. I went to college and did exceptionally well. I had a pretty awesome marriage for 5 years, but my ex and I were so much better friends than we were romantic partners or lovers that I don't see my marriage and divorce as a failure. I see it as a successful 5 years, and we grew up together, learned, And then after, I have had this amazing awakening in my womanhood and my independence in the last 3 years that I just feel so liberated. But at the end of the day, when being told that my grandmother passed, I was reminded that I come from a very dark and trauma-filled past. And no matter how successful I am, no matter how beautiful I look, no matter how smart I feel or happy I am at times, I still come from who I come from. And I didn't realize until recently that it's very triggering for me to I think it's important to note that in this moment, I'm not so much holding back my feelings as much as I'm trying to find the best way to express myself and be vulnerable and also take care of my heart. I believe a part of my magic is my vulnerability, but at the same time, boundaries are important. And I don't want to, traumatize myself by trying to, share with you all. But as an adult, I recognize that my biological family a lot of times was toxic and not good for my mental or emotional health. So I had to set hard boundaries. The reason I had to set hard boundaries is because depression, man, depression is like this looming fear I sometimes have, because a lot of times I was a very high functioning depressed person. People had no idea. To this day, people are like, "What? Why didn't you tell me?" And I'm like, "It's not really." How are you doing today, Carmalita? Depressed. Like, no one really wants to hear, Anyway, it's important for me to make the connection because there are some people in my life who are responsible for why I'm here today. I have a very layered relationship with my biological family, but the people in my life who have stepped up since are why I'm here in many ways. These are tears of gratitude, because even though I experienced a loss, and the loss of my grandmother is bringing up a lot of stuff for me from my childhood and about my family, and it's frustrating me because I wanted to get to know her and I feel like I never got the chance or the opportunity to. However, when I find myself getting really down, I like to also hold space for gratitude, even if a very little bit, and not in a way to make toxic positivity a way of life. But I think it's important to acknowledge, at least for me, because I'll get really, really overwhelmed and go into this really sad rabbit hole and then it's a wrap, right? But when I find myself getting really overwhelmed, I'll think, wow, I felt this feeling before and look how far I've come. And then I'll think, well, how did I get this far? And then I'm reminded by every amazing person in my life who I consider my family. And that's really important to me. While I'm reminded that I lost out on my relationship with my paternal grandmother because of adoption or my biological parents or whatever, I can grieve that relationship. But I welcome her as my ancestor, and I also hold space of gratitude for the people in my life, whether it's been coaches in junior high and high school who had no idea what I was going through but gave me an extra nudge, or they didn't give me a hard time for being a difficult teenager. Teachers who saw a light in me before I saw it. I remember harder times about grade school than I remember what I learned in class. But I also remember how certain teachers made me feel. And I appreciate them because I didn't have family, but I had them, and they showed up in different ways that were beautiful. September is also Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. And it's important to note that there was a time in my life I have felt like life was too heavy. Life was too much to bear. I felt that it would probably just be easier to not be here, to not exist. I was very suicidal and had suicidal ideation. I think it's important to note that if you're watching this video and you've ever had any suicidal ideations or felt like the weight of your world is too much to bear, let me be the reminder that it gets better, that there are people out there who are willing to listen. There are people out there who would much rather hear you cry than be crying at your funeral. There are people who have been through what you've been through. Sometimes they're even strangers. One of the amazing things about social media, I think, are the connections that I've made with genuine like-minded people, and you can find those there too. It's a very humbling thing to express to a person that you don't want to be here, or that you feel like life is too heavy. That's okay. Forget your pride. Your life is much too important. If you don't have a good relationship with your biological family, let me just tell you that I've had many mothers, I've had many cousins, I've had many children. And even though I'm experiencing loss at the moment, I am reminded that there is a place specifically for me in this world, whether it's writing or speaking or running my mouth on my pink couch or poetry or talents and abilities I haven't unlocked yet. There's a specific piece in the universe just for me. And if I wasn't there, I mean, the universe would probably like combust, right? As I'm grieving and I'm mourning the loss of a relationship I didn't have with my grandmother, I am also holding space to appreciate all the amazing relationships I have cultivated in my life that make up my family.